Why is nothing happening? Why is nothing changing? How did the border crisis get so bad? And how could Joe Biden and Kamala Harris let it get this far? This administration has unilaterally destroyed any semblance of the existing immigration law. There is no strategy, there is no plan, and we are no longer safe as a country. Our borders were secure. In 2020, they were secure. And now they're the furthest thing from secure. In the last year alone, 2 million people, 2 million have crossed our southern border illegally. Millions more are coming. Nearly a year ago, Kamala Harris practically welcomed them in with open arms.
I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come.
Ooh, do not come. Scary. Right then, that moment is when at least 2 million illegal migrants pack their fentanyl up, their trafficked children and sex workers, and trek north. And since it's been an astronomical, record-shattering numbers at the border, and still nothing is happening. Well, maybe correction. Something is happening. Illegal migrants are flown into and around the country secretly in the middle of the night to come in unaccounted for, many with criminal records. Illegal migrants come to our border, and when they make it across, to add insult and injury, like a proverbial middle finger to each and every American, to each and every one of you, they take selfies, congratulate themselves, and squeal in delight about just how easy it was to come across. You know, I received some of your messages about how we should stop calling these people migrants or even illegal migrants, that we should refer to them instead as invaders, because as one of you said, that's exactly what they are. You know what? I agree with you. They are invaders. Because what is the meaning of that word invader? Someone who enters by force in order to conquer, a trespasser, someone who intrudes on the property of another without permission. Well, isn't that all true? Biden and Kamala's futures are coming to a head, and their failures are costing us American lives. A Texas National Guard soldier drowned trying to rescue invaders. 22-year-old named Bishop Evans, on Friday, he jumped into the Rio Grande River outside Eagle Pass to save 2 invaders who appeared to be drowning in strong currents. Evans left his gear on shore but never returned. His body recovered just this morning, and now it turns out that those 2 migrants, those 2 invaders, were known drug traffickers. That this man did his job valiantly, trying to save a life, tells you everything you need to know about the makeup of our brave men and women fighting every day to secure our borders. The same ones that this administration belittles. That includes you, Joe Biden. That includes you, Alejandro Mayorkas.
The investigation into what occurred has not yet concluded. We know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism.
Systemic racism. Systemic racism. That includes you, Jen Psaki.
He also felt they were horrific and horrible. I don't know anyone who could watch that video and not have that emotion. Last night, our Secretary of Homeland Security put out a statement conveying there'd be an investigation, that he's going to send additional personnel. And I think it's important for people to know this is not who we are. That's not who the Biden-Harris administration is. And we're going to absolutely pursue that investigation and get to the bottom of what happened here.
Got it. Sure you did. And that includes you, Kamala Harris, the worst, the most vicious of them all.
Human beings should not be treated that way, and as we all know, it also evoked images of some of the worst moments of our history where that kind of behavior has been used against the indigenous people of our country, has been used against African Americans during times of slavery.
Yeah. Congrats, Border Czar, on stooping to the lowest level just to make an unproven case to cover up your own failure. This should be talked about more, and I will take the time to talk about it right here on The Balance, because these border agents deserve the attention, and they deserve an apology this White House refuses to give them. The sheer and obvious desperation of Biden and his cronies to distract Americans from the worst border crisis in recent history, each and every single one of them is guilty of it. They defamed these border agents. They blasted them as near criminals and even stooped so low as to evoke the memory of our country's dark history to do it. Shame on them. And shame on them for treating illegal migrants, invaders, with more respect, affording them more freedoms than our own very law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. In a surreal, very surreal moment, the Biden administration claimed COVID was again on the horizon, so it justified forcing U.S. citizens to keep wearing masks in public buildings and transportation. But at the same time, it waived all such requirements for illegal entrants. Invaders. Citizens mask up, invaders mask down. And so our so-called border czar, Kamala Harris, where is she? What is she doing? Well, she's talking about our other border, you know, the one up in the sky, and failing miserably about that also. Watch.
Space is exciting. It spurs our imaginations, and it forces us to ask big questions. Space, it affects us all, and it connects us all.
A Texas soldier, folks, died trying to save people illegally crossing the border. That's our border czar. 3 days ago. Where are the remarks from the supposed leadership of the country? Where is the memorial for him? Not one thing to say from the White House. Will it take the passage of time to get one, Kamala?
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
One heartbeat away from the presidency, that woman was. Maybe Joe, Kamala, Alejandro, and Jen aren't saying anything about that fallen Texas National Guardsman, Specialist Bishop Evans, say his name, Specialist Bishop Evans. Maybe they have no comment because they're still investigating his now confirmed drowning, but they didn't wait for an investigation to downright defame and admonish those border agents on horses, did they? They didn't wait back then to completely misrepresent what had happened. Without the facts, they ran with it. What's the difference now? It's obvious. The difference now is this. Talking about Bishop Evans, this young hero at the border, only highlights their failures. But disparaging Border Patrol agents distracted from them. If Biden wants to completely undermine America's confidence, he's doing an excellent job. Couldn't possibly do better, in fact. Right now, in another slap to the face of every American, Biden is conducting nighttime flights of migrant minors into the U.S. where they supposedly will meet up with relatives. And if Title 42 is reversed, like Biden says he will do in less than a month, then most adults who claim asylum will also be allowed to remain in our country until their cases are heard by an immigration judge. Well, that can take a long time, folks. And by the way, most of them, vast majority of them, never show up for the hearing. As if we didn't already do enough to invite these invaders in, this is another notch in the Biden open invitation belt for invaders. We can safely assume that Biden's de facto policy is to allow unchecked immigration without admitting it. How else to explain his administration's failure 15 months after taking office to do anything to stop it? How else? The imminent end of Title 42 is producing a political revolt even in Biden's own party, and there's no solution in sight. Border agents are preparing for a flood of invaders. The worst is yet to come, and this is their only line of defense.
Do not come. Do not come.
Don't come. Don't come is what we should have said to these two 15 months ago, and we should say it to the country 2 years from now.